The word came out so naturally, so casually, that for a moment I thought I'd misheard. Could you pass the salt, Mom? I froze, my hand halfway to my wine glass. Across the table, my son Jason smiled at his fiancée like she'd said something perfectly normal. Like she hadn't just called me Mom, when this was the first time we'd ever met. The first time I'd ever laid eyes on her. I'm sorry, I said, my voice coming out more sharply than I intended. Emma, that was her name, Emma, looked up from her plate with those wide, innocent eyes. The salt? If you don't mind.
She smiled at me.
That same warm, familiar smile Jason had been describing for months. The smile of the woman he'd fallen in love with, the woman he was going to marry in 6 weeks. The woman who had just called me Mom like we'd known each other for years. I passed her the salt shaker, my hand trembling slightly. Of course. Jason reached over and squeezed Emma's hand, oblivious to my discomfort. Isn't she amazing, Mom? I told you you'd love her. But that was the thing. He'd told me I'd love her. He'd told me they were getting married. He'd shown me pictures, sent me texts, talked about her constantly for the past 8 months. What he hadn't done was bring her to meet me. Not once. Until tonight. Let me back up, because this doesn't make sense without understanding the context. My name is Catherine Morrison, and I'm a 53-year-old widow who raised 2 children on her own after my husband died in a car accident when they were young. My daughter Rachel is 31, married, living in Portland with 2 beautiful children. And my son Jason is 28, a software engineer in Seattle, and until 8 months ago, perpetually single. Then he met Emma. He called me on a Tuesday in March, his voice bubbling with excitement I hadn't heard since he was a teenager. Mom, I met someone. She's incredible. Smart, funny, beautiful, everything I've been looking for. I was thrilled. Jason had always been the cautious one, the analytical one, the son who overthought every decision. Hearing him sound so spontaneously happy made my heart sing. Tell me about her, I'd said, settling into my favorite chair with a cup of tea. Her name is Emma Clark. She's 26, works in marketing. We met at a coffee shop. She spilled her latte all over my laptop, and somehow we ended up talking for 3 hours. He laughed. Mom, I know this sounds crazy, but I think she might be the one. Over the next months, Jason sent me photos. Emma at the beach, her blonde hair whipping in the wind. Emma at a restaurant, laughing at something off camera. Emma and Jason together, his arm around her shoulders, both of them glowing with new relationship energy. She was beautiful. That was undeniable. Delicate features, bright blue eyes, a smile that looked like it belonged in a toothpaste commercial. When do I get to meet her? I'd asked after the 3rd month. Soon, Mom. I promise. She's just been really busy with work, and I wanted to be perfect when you 2 meet. Soon became 4 months. Then 5. Then 6. Jason, you've been dating her for half a year? I'd said during one of our weekly phone calls. I'd really like to meet the woman my son is so serious about. I know. We're planning something. Maybe Thanksgiving. But Thanksgiving came and went. Jason had dinner with Emma's family instead. They're local, Mom, and it's just easier this year. That should have been my first warning sign. Then, 2 months ago, Jason called with the news. We're engaged. Mom, I asked her last night, and she said yes. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I said, genuine happiness mixing with growing concern. When's the wedding? 6 weeks. We're doing a small ceremony in Seattle, just close family and friends. We don't want to wait. 6 weeks. They'd been dating for 8 months, and now they were getting married in 6 weeks, and I still hadn't met her. Jason, don't you think this is a bit fast? When you know, Mom. His voice had that defensive edge I recognized from his teenage years. Emma's amazing. You're going to love her. I'm sure I will, but I'd like to actually meet her before the wedding. You will. We're coming to visit next week. Dinner at your place? Emma's excited to finally meet you. Finally. As if it had been my fault we hadn't met yet. I spent a week preparing for that dinner. I cleaned the house until it sparkled. I planned the menu carefully. Roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans almondine, apple pie for dessert. Jason's favorites, the meal I'd made for every birthday and celebration since he was a child. I wanted everything to be perfect. Wanted Emma to feel welcomed, wanted part of the family. I never imagined how strange perfect would feel. They arrived at 6 o'clock exactly. I opened the door, and there she was, Emma Clark in person, even more beautiful than in the photos. She wore a soft blue dress that matched her eyes, her blonde hair falling in gentle waves past her shoulders. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, and then she hugged me. Not a polite, first meeting hug. A real hug. The kind you give someone you've known for years. She held on just a beat too long, and when she pulled back, her eyes were almost teary. "It's so good to finally see you," she said, her voice catching slightly. "See me. Not meet me. See me." "It's lovely to meet you," I said carefully, stepping back to let them in. Jason carried in a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers, white roses and lilies. My favorites. But I'd never told Jason what my favorite flowers were. Had I? "Emma picked them out," Jason said proudly. "She said white roses and lilies would be perfect." Emma smiled at me, that warm, knowing smile. I just had a feeling. We moved into the dining room, and that's when I started noticing other things. Emma knew where the bathroom was without asking. When Jason went to help me in the kitchen, she called after him. "The wine glasses are in the cabinet above the sink, right?" She was right. But how did she know that? At dinner, she complimented the chicken. "This is delicious. Is that rosemary and thyme? And just a hint of lemon?" It was. Exactly right. The same recipe I'd been making for 30 years. "You have a good palate," I said. "Oh, I've always loved home cooking," Emma said. "There's nothing like a meal made with love." My mother used to say food tastes better when it's made in a kitchen full of memories. My kitchen was full of memories. Children's height marks still faintly visible on the doorframe. The chip in the tile where Jason had dropped a pot when he was 12. The window seat where I'd read bedtime stories on rainy afternoons. And Emma was looking around the room like she recognized every corner. That's when she asked for the salt. That's when she called me Mom. Jason didn't react. Didn't even blink. Like it was the most natural thing in the world for his fiancée to call me by that name. But I had children. I knew what Mom sounded like from a child's lips. And Emma didn't say it like someone tentatively testing out what to call her future mother-in-law. She said it like she'd been saying it for years. I tried to shake off the unease as dinner continued. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Emma was just one of those naturally warm people who bonded quickly. Maybe she'd seen photos of my house that Jason had shown her, heard stories about my cooking, and was just trying to make a good impression. But then there were the other things. "Jason tells me you're redecorating the living room," Emma said, carefully cutting her chicken. "Getting rid of the old floral couch finally?" I set down my fork. I haven't told Jason anything about redecorating. "Oh." Emma's smile flickered for just a second. "Maybe I saw it on your Facebook? You must have posted about it." "I don't have Facebook." An awkward silence settled over the table. Jason jumped in quickly. "You probably mentioned it on the phone, Mom. You know how you talk about wanting to update things." Had I? I honestly couldn't remember. Maybe I had mentioned it in passing months ago. "The floral couch has been here since the kids were little," I said, watching Emma's face carefully. "I've been thinking about replacing it for years." "Well, it's a big decision," Emma said warmly. "Furniture holds so many memories. I'm sure it's hard to let go." She said it with such understanding, such knowing sympathy, that my skin prickled. "Emma, can I ask you something?" I kept my voice light, conversational. "Jason said you two met at a coffee shop in Seattle." Which one? The collective on Pike Street, she said without hesitation. I was running late for a meeting, wasn't watching where I was going, and boom, his laptop got drenched in oat milk latte. She laughed, touching Jason's arm affectionately. Worst first impression ever, but somehow he forgave me. Jason nodded, smiling at the memory. Best accident that ever happened to me. And where did you grow up? I continued.
Bellevue.
Not far from here, actually. Small world, right? Emma took a sip of wine. My parents still live there. You'll meet them at the wedding. Everything she said was reasonable, normal. So, why did I feel like I was watching a performance? What about college? I asked. Where did you study? University of Washington. Communications major, marketing minor. Emma's answers came easily, comfortably. I always knew I wanted to work in brand strategy. There's something fascinating about how people connect with stories, you know? How the right narrative can make someone feel like they've known a product or a person forever. The way she said that last part made something cold settle in my stomach. Jason stood to clear the plates. I'll help, Emma said immediately, rising with him. Oh, that's not necessary, I started, but she was already gathering dishes. I insist, Mom. You cooked this beautiful meal. The least I can do is help clean up. There it was again.
Mom.
So casual, so natural. I followed them into the kitchen, ostensibly to serve dessert, but really to observe. Emma moved around my kitchen with unsettling familiarity. She knew which drawer held the dish towels. She opened the dishwasher and began loading it with the same configuration I always used. Plates in the back, glasses in the front, silverware sorted by type. You're very efficient, I said carefully. Emma laughed. Oh, I'm just a neat freak. My mother always said I was born organized. Jason kissed her temple. It's one of the things I love about her. She makes my chaotic life make sense. They were good together, I could see that. The way they moved around each other, the small touches, the shared glances. This wasn't a new relationship trying too hard. They had the comfort of people who'd been together much longer than 8 months. Or at least Emma did. After dessert, Emma correctly guessed I'd made my famous apple pie before I even brought it out. We moved to the living room. The one with the floral couch Emma had somehow known I wanted to replace. Can I use your bathroom? Emma asked. Of course. It's just down the hall, second door on the right. I remember. She caught herself, that flicker of something crossing her face again. I mean, Jason mentioned it. The layout. She disappeared down the hallway, and I turned to Jason. She's lovely, I said because she was. That was the confusing part. Under different circumstances, I would have adored her. But something was wrong, and I couldn't put my finger on what. I told you, Jason said, grinning. Mom, I know this has been fast, but Emma is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've never felt this sure about anything. Jason, can I ask you something? Has Emma been to this house before? He looked confused.
What?
No, of course not. Why? She seems to know her way around. The bathroom, the wine glasses, the dishwasher. Mom. Jason's voice had that edge again. She's observant. She's smart. Please don't start analyzing this. I'm not analyzing, I'm just. You're being weird about her, and I don't understand why. He stood up, running his hand through his hair in frustration. I finally meet someone incredible, someone I want to spend my life with, and you're interrogating her about knowing where the bathroom is? That's not what I'm doing. It feels like it. Jason's voice softened. Look, I know this has been fast. I know you're probably worried. But Emma is good for me, Mom. She makes me happy. Can't that be enough? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to smile and hug my son and welcome Emma into our family with open arms. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Emma hadn't just met me tonight. Somehow, impossibly, she'd known me already. Emma returned from the bathroom, and I noticed she'd fixed her lipstick. Not reapplied, fixed it, to the exact shade I remembered from earlier. Everything okay? She asked, sensing the tension. Fine, Jason said quickly. Just fine. Actually, we should probably get going. It's getting late. It was barely 8 o'clock. They gathered their things, and I walked them to the door. Emma hugged me again, that same too familiar embrace. Thank you so much for having us, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. This meant the world to me. When she pulled back, there were actual tears in her eyes. After they left, I stood in my doorway, watching their car disappear down the street. Then I went back inside and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked through old photo albums. I pulled out boxes of pictures from when the kids were young, flipping through birthday parties and school plays and family vacations, looking for something, anything. And then I found it. A photo from Jason's 8th birthday party, 20 years ago. A crowd of kids in the backyard, all gathered around the picnic table for cake. I pulled the photo closer to the lamp, squinting at the faces. And there, in the back corner, partially obscured by another child but unmistakable with those same blonde curls and bright blue eyes, was a little girl. A little girl who looked exactly like Emma. My hands started shaking. I searched through more photos. Rachel's 10th birthday there, in the background, the same blonde girl. A family barbecue from 18 years ago. There she was again, standing near the fence, watching. In every photo, she was always in the background. Always partially hidden. Always watching. But she was there. Emma had been in my house before. She'd been at my children's birthday parties. 20 years ago. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my computer searching. Emma Clark, Bellevue, Washington. Dozens of results. None of them the right person. I tried Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Found an Emma Clark who matched the age and location, but her profile was sparse. A few generic photos. No personal information. Nothing that revealed anything real about her. It was like she'd constructed just enough of an online presence to appear normal, but not enough to actually be traceable. At 3 a.m, I called my daughter Rachel. Mom? What's wrong? Is everything okay? I need to ask you something, I said, my voice tight. Do you remember a girl from when you were kids? Blonde, blue eyes, around Jason's age? She might have been at some of your birthday parties. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Mom, it's 3 a.m. Are you feeling all right? Please, Rachel. This is important. I don't know, maybe? Mom, that was 20 years ago. I barely remember half the kids I went to school with. Why are you asking about this? I told her about dinner, about Emma, about the strange familiarity, the way she knew things she shouldn't know. And you found her in old photos? Rachel asked, her voice shifting from sleepy to concerned.
Yes.
In the background of several pictures. At your parties, at Jason's parties. Always there, but not central. Like she was visiting or something. Did you ask Jason about her? He says they met 8 months ago. That she'd never been to the house before tonight. Rachel exhaled slowly. Mom, that's really weird. Like really weird. Maybe you should. Should what? Tell my son his fiancée is lying about how they met? Based on what? A feeling and some old photographs where I can barely see the girl's face. Can you send me the photos? Let me look at them. I spent the next hour scanning the old photographs and sending them to Rachel. She called back at dawn. Mom, she said, her voice tight. I think I remember her. My heart stopped. You do? There was this girl. God, I haven't thought about her in forever. She lived a few streets over. Her name was Emma? Or maybe it was Emily. Something with an E. Rachel paused. She used to show up at the park sometimes when we were there. She was always alone. I felt bad for her, so I'd invite her to play. You invited her to your birthday parties? Maybe. I invited a lot of kids back then. You always let me. Another pause. Mom, she was weird. I remember that now. She'd ask strange questions about our family, about you and Dad, about what her house looked like inside, what you cooked for dinner, stuff like that. What happened to her? I don't know. She just stopped coming around. This was right before Dad died, so everything from that period is kind of blurry in my memory. Rachel's voice dropped. Mom, you don't think this is the same person, do you? That would be insane. I don't know what to think. I spent the weekend obsessing over those photographs, scanning them, enlarging them, trying to get a clear view of that blonde girl in the background. The resolution was terrible. These were pictures from a cheap disposable camera, taken before smartphones and digital photography made everything crystal clear. But the more I looked, the more certain I became. The shape of the face, the way she stood, slightly apart from the other children, the way she was always looking at something or someone off camera, looking at my family. On Monday morning, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I drove to Bellevue, to the neighborhood Emma had said she grew up in, and I started asking questions. I went to the local coffee shop first, a place that looked like it had been there for decades. An older woman was working behind the counter. Excuse me, I said, pulling up a photo of Emma on my phone, one Jason had sent me months ago. Do you know this woman? She said she grew up around here. The woman squinted at the photo and shook her head. Can't say she looks familiar, but I see hundreds of faces a week. Was she a regular? She would have been a kid about 20 years ago. Maybe came in with her parents. 20 years ago, I wasn't working here yet, sorry. I tried the library next, then the local elementary school, though they wouldn't give me any information without a reason. I walked through neighborhoods, looking at houses, trying to imagine which one might have been Emma's. Nothing. No one recognized her. No one remembered a Clark family with a daughter named Emma. It was like she'd been a ghost. There, but not really there. By Tuesday, Jason was calling me. Mom, Emma said you seemed uncomfortable at dinner. Is everything okay? I wanted to tell him everything. About the photographs, about Rachel's vague memories, about my investigation in Bellevue. But how could I? What would I say? Your fiancée is a stranger who somehow knew our family 20 years ago and is now pretending she didn't? It sounded insane, even in my own head. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. It's been a stressful few weeks at work.
A lie.
I'd barely been able to focus on work at all. Emma really wants you to like her, Jason said, and I could hear the vulnerability in his voice. She said she might have come on too strong, calling you Mom right away. She's just excited about becoming part of the family. It's fine, Jason. Really. We'd like to have you over for dinner at our place. This Friday? Emma wants to cook for you, show you our apartment. Every instinct told me to say no, to keep my distance until I figured out what was going on. But I said yes, because Jason was my son, and I needed to understand what was happening. Their apartment was in Capitol Hill, a trendy neighborhood in Seattle. Modern building, expensive-looking lobby, the kind of place young professionals with good salaries could afford. Emma answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked younger this way, more vulnerable. Mom. She hugged me again, and this time I paid attention to how it felt. The way her arms wrapped around me, the pressure of her embrace, the duration. It felt practiced, rehearsed, like she'd imagined this hug 1,000 times before doing it. The apartment was beautiful, open concept, lots of light, tasteful furniture. And on the walls were photographs, some of Jason and Emma together, but others that made me stop cold. A framed photo of my house, taken from the front, my flower garden in full bloom. You've been to my house before, I said, pointing at the photo. Oh, Jason took that last month when he was visiting you, Emma said smoothly. I thought it was such a beautiful shot. Your garden is stunning. I haven't seen Jason in 3 months. Emma's smile faltered. It must have been longer ago then. Time flies. But Jason had been noticeably absent from my life for the past year. Always busy, always traveling for work, always with excuses. Since he'd met Emma, I moved through the apartment, Emma chattering nervously behind me about the dinner she was preparing: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans. My recipe. The exact meal I'd made them the week before. In the bedroom, I'd claimed I needed to use the bathroom and taken a wrong turn accidentally. I saw more photos. Jason as a child. Rachel at her college graduation. Our family at Christmas, years ago. Photos Jason might have had. Photos he might have shown Emma. Or photos Emma had taken herself, 20 years ago. In the bathroom, I opened the medicine cabinet. Just lipstick, face cream, contact lens solution. Normal things. Except, the lipstick was the exact shade I wore. The same brand I'd been using for 15 years. My hands started trembling again. I closed the cabinet and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old suddenly.
Worn. Scared.
What was happening? What did this woman want? Dinner was torture. Emma had recreated my meal perfectly, down to the rosemary and thyme on the chicken, the exact butter-to-cream ratio in the mashed potatoes. She'd even made apple pie for dessert. "This is delicious," I said, my voice hollow. "I'm so glad you like it." Emma beamed. I wanted to make something special. Something that felt like home. Jason was oblivious, talking about work, about the wedding plans, about the honeymoon they were planning to Costa Rica.
He was happy.
Genuinely, transparently happy in a way I hadn't seen him in years. And across the table, Emma watched me watching her, that knowing smile playing at the corners of her lips. After dinner, Jason excused himself to take a work call. "I'm sorry, I know it's late, but this client is in London, and it's their morning," leaving Emma and me alone in the living room. The moment Jason's office door closed, Emma's demeanor changed. The nervous chattiness disappeared, replaced by something quieter, more focused. "You know, don't you?" she said softly. My heart hammered in my chest. "Know what?" "That we've met before." Emma folded her hands in her lap, looking down at them. "You found the photographs. Rachel told Jason, and Jason told me. He doesn't think it's important, but you do." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm exactly who I said I am. Emma Clark, 26 years old, marketing professional, Jason's fiancée." She looked up at me, and her eyes were wet. "But you're right. I did know your family when I was younger."
Why didn't you say something?
Why lie about it? Because Jason doesn't remember me, and I didn't want to make things weird. She twisted her hands together. I was just a lonely kid who hung around the neighborhood, who sometimes got invited to birthday parties out of pity, who watched your perfect family from the outside and wished I could be part of it. That doesn't explain. I gestured around the apartment. All of this. The photos, the recipes, the way you know things about my house, about me. Emma stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. "My childhood was not good, Mrs. Morrison. My father was absent. My mother was difficult, angry. I spent as much time away from home as I could, wandering the neighborhood, looking for places that felt safe." She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. "Your house was safe. Your family was safe. On the days when I got invited to birthday parties or barbecues, those were the best days of my life." "Emma, I know how this looks," she continued, her voice cracking. "I know it seems obsessive or crazy. But I'm not trying to replace anyone or infiltrate your family. I fell in love with Jason without knowing who he was. And when I finally figured out that he was that little boy from those perfect birthday parties 20 years ago, I felt like the universe had given me a second chance." "A second chance at what?" "At belonging." She wiped her eyes. "At being part of the family I always wanted. At having a mother who—" She stopped, catching herself. "A mother who what?" Emma looked at me with such raw longing it physically hurt to see. A mother who actually wanted me. Jason came back into the room then, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Emma said quickly, wiping her face and putting the smile back on. just getting emotional about the wedding. You know how I am. Jason wrapped his arms around her. 6 more weeks, and you'll officially be a Morrison. Emma looked at me over Jason's shoulder, her expression pleading, asking me to understand, asking me to keep her secret.
I should have said something right then.
Should have pulled Jason aside and told him everything. But I couldn't, because despite all the strangeness, despite all my fear and confusion, I saw something in Emma's eyes that I recognized. Loneliness. Desperate, aching loneliness. I knew that feeling. I'd felt it myself after my husband died, raising 2 children alone, watching other families with 2 parents, and wondering why mine had been taken away. I should get going, I said, standing. It's a long drive back. Emma walked me to the door. At the threshold, she grabbed my hand. Please, she whispered, too quiet for Jason to hear. Please don't take this away from me. I love him. I really do love him. This isn't some crazy obsession. I just wanted to belong somewhere. And I finally do. I looked at this young woman, this stranger who'd somehow woven herself into my son's life, and I didn't know what to believe. I drove home in a daze, Emma's words echoing in my head. Please don't take this away from me. But what was I taking away? And from whom? From Emma, who claimed to have innocently reconnected with a family she'd admired as a lonely child. Or from Jason, who deserved to know the truth about the woman he was marrying. When I got home, Rachel was waiting on my front porch. You didn't answer your phone, she said, standing as I pulled into the driveway. I've been calling for an hour. What are you doing here? The kids are with Mark. Mom, we need to talk. She followed me inside, and I could see the worry etched into her face. I've been thinking about that girl.
Emma.
And I remembered something else. I set my purse down, suddenly exhausted. What? She didn't just come to birthday parties. She used to watch our house. I'd see her sometimes standing across the street, just looking. It creeped me out, but I was a kid, so I didn't really understand what it meant. Rachel sat down on the floral couch. Mom, I think she was obsessed with us. With our family. She said she was lonely. That her home life was bad, and our house felt safe. And you believe her? Did I? I sat down beside Rachel, rubbing my temples. I don't know what I believe. She seemed genuinely upset tonight. Genuinely in love with Jason. Mom, normal people don't stalk families as children and then coincidentally fall in love with their son 20 years later. Rachel pulled out her phone. I did some digging. Real digging. I have a friend who works in public records. She showed me her phone screen. It was a newspaper article from 24 years ago, yellowed with age, but digitized now. The headline read, Local girl, age 6, removed from home in neglect case. The article was brief. A child named Emily and Clark had been removed from her parents' custody after neighbors reported seeing her wandering the streets unsupervised for days at a time. The mother, Susan Clark, had been charged with child neglect. The father's identity was listed as unknown. There was a photo, a small, grainy image of a little girl with blonde hair and haunted eyes, sitting in what looked like a social worker's office. It was Emma. She lied about her name, Rachel said quietly. It's Emily, not Emma. Emily and Clark. And according to records, she was placed in foster care at age 6 and bounced around different homes until she aged out of the system at 18. How did you find all this? Her address history. The Bellevue address she gave Jason is fake, or at least there's no record of any Clark family ever living there. But I found her real history. She grew up in foster care, Mom. Most of her placements were within a few miles of our house. I stared at the photograph of that little girl. 6 years old. The same age Jason had been in some of those birthday photos. She was telling the truth about one thing, I said softly. Her childhood was bad. That doesn't excuse lying to Jason about who she is. Rachel's voice rose. Mom, she's been planning this. For years, probably. She found Jason somehow. Maybe on social media. Maybe she's been tracking him all along, and she engineered this entire relationship. You don't know that. Don't I? Rachel scrolled through more documents on her phone. Look at this. Her job history. She's worked for 3 different companies in the past 5 years. Guess where they're all located? I looked at the addresses. All in Seattle. All within blocks of Jason's office. She's been circling him, Rachel said. Getting close. Positioning herself to accidentally bump into him at a coffee shop. My stomach turned over. We need to tell him. He won't believe us. You know he won't. He's in love with her, Mom. He'll think we're trying to sabotage his happiness. She was right. I'd seen the way Jason looked at Emma, the way he defended her. If we came to him with this, he'd choose her, and we'd lose him. So, what do? I asked, feeling helpless. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then, we talked to her.
Directly.
Without Jason. We tell her we know who she really is, and we give her a choice. Tell Jason the truth herself, or we will. I called Emma the next morning. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. Mrs. Morrison. Her voice was bright, cheerful. I'm so glad you called. I wanted to apologize again if I made you uncomfortable. We need to meet, I interrupted. Just you and me.
Today.
There's a coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Pine. Do you know it?
A pause.
Then, quieter. Yes. I know it. 2 o'clock. Come alone. I hung up before she could respond. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner booth, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She'd dressed down, jeans, a plain sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked young and scared. I sat down across from her and placed my phone on the table. On the screen was the newspaper article about Emily and Clark. Your name isn't Emma, I said. No preamble. No small talk. It's Emily. Her face went pale. Mrs. Morrison, you weren't just some lonely kid who occasionally came to birthday parties. You were a child in foster care who fixated on my family, who watched our house, who learned everything about us. I kept my voice low, steady, even though my heart was racing. And 20 years later, you engineered a meeting with my son and made him fall in love with you. That's not... She stopped, closing her eyes. That's not entirely true. What part? I didn't engineer the meeting. She opened her eyes, and they were swimming with tears. I really did spill coffee on his laptop by accident. I didn't even recognize him at first. But when he told me his name, when he started talking about growing up in Redmond, about his mom and his sister, she trailed off. I knew. I remembered. And you didn't say anything. Would you have? Emily leaned forward. If you were me, if you'd spent your childhood watching the one perfect family you'd ever seen, dreaming about what it would be like to belong to them, and then, by pure chance, you met the son, and he was wonderful and kind and he liked you? Her voice broke. Would you have said, oh, by the way, I used to stalk your family when I was 6 years old? You should have told him. I know I should have. But I was scared. Scared he'd think I was crazy. Scared he'd leave me. Tears were streaming down her face now. Mrs. Morrison, I love him. I really, truly love him. Not because of who his family was, or because I'm trying to recapture some childhood fantasy. I love him because he's good and smart, and he makes me laugh. And when I'm with him, I finally feel like I'm home. You lied to him about your name, about your childhood, about everything. Emma is my middle name. I started using it when I turned 18 because I wanted a fresh start. Emily Clark was a damaged foster kid. Emma Clark could be anyone. She wiped her eyes. And yes, I lied about my childhood. Because who wants to marry someone who grew up in the system? Who had a mother charged with neglect and a father who didn't exist? Jason comes from this beautiful, stable family. I wanted him to think I did too. So, you created a fake life in Bellevue. I created a life that was close enough to real that no one would question it. Parents who lived far enough away that we'd never have to visit. A childhood that was normal and boring and unmemorable. Her voice hardened slightly. I'm not the first person to reinvent themselves, Mrs. Morrison. Most people just don't have someone digging into their past to expose them. The accusation stung, because it was true. I had been digging, but for good reason. What do you want from my family? I asked. What I've always wanted. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. To belong. To be loved. To have a mother who doesn't look at me like I'm a problem to be solved. She looked at me directly. You have no idea what it's like to grow up without that. To watch other families through windows and wonder what you did wrong to deserve being alone. I thought about my own childhood. Not perfect, but stable. Parents who loved me, siblings, Sunday dinners, birthday parties. Everything Emily had never had. What happens after I tell Jason? I asked. Please don't. Her voice turned desperate.
Please. Give me a chance to tell him myself.
The right way. Not as an ambush, but as the truth. The whole truth about who I am, and where I came from, and why I didn't say anything sooner. And if he leaves you, then I'll have lost the best thing that ever happened to me. She reached across the table like she wanted to take my hand, but stopped short. But at least he'll have heard it from me. At least I'll have been honest with him finally. Please, Mrs. Morrison. Please give me that chance. I looked at this young woman who'd spent her life on the outside looking in, who'd made terrible choices out of desperation and fear, who loved my son. I could see that now, could see it was real, even if it had started with a lie. You have 1 week, I said finally. Tell him everything. Your real name, your childhood, how you knew about our family before you met him. Everything. And if you don't, I will. Thank you, Emily whispered. Thank you. I drove home in a daze, Emma's words echoing in my head. Please don't take this away from me. But what was I taking away? And from whom? From Emma, who claimed to have innocently reconnected with a family she'd admired as a lonely child. Or from Jason, who deserved to know the truth about the woman he was marrying. When I got home, Rachel was waiting on my front porch. You didn't answer your phone, she said, standing as I pulled into the driveway. I've been calling for an hour.
What are you doing here?
The kids are with Mark. Mom, we need to talk. She followed me inside, and I could see the worry etched into her face. I've been thinking about that girl.
Emma.
And I remembered something else. I set my purse down, suddenly exhausted. What? She didn't just come to birthday parties. She used to watch our house. I'd see her sometimes standing across the street, just looking. It creeped me out, but I was a kid, so I didn't really understand what it meant. Rachel sat down on the floral couch. Mom, I think she was obsessed with us. With our family. She said she was lonely, that her home life was bad, and our house felt safe. And you believe her? Did I? I sat down beside Rachel, rubbing my temples. I don't know what I believe. She seemed genuinely upset tonight. Genuinely in love with Jason. Mom, normal people don't stalk families as children and then coincidentally fall in love with their son 20 years later. Rachel pulled out her phone. I did some digging. Real digging. I have a friend who works in public records. She showed me her phone screen. It was a newspaper article from 24 years ago, yellowed with age, but digitized now. The headline read, Local girl, age 6, removed from home in neglect case. The article was brief. A child named Emily and Clark had been removed from her parents' custody after neighbors reported seeing her wandering the streets unsupervised for days at a time. The mother, Susan Clark, had been charged with child neglect. The father's identity was listed as unknown. There was a photo, a small, grainy image of a little girl with blonde hair and haunted eyes, sitting in what looked like a social worker's office. It was Emma. She lied about her name, Rachel said quietly. It's Emily, not Emma. Emily and Clark. And according to records, she was placed in foster care at age 6 and bounced around different homes until she aged out of the system at 18. How did you find all this? Her address history. The Bellevue address she gave Jason is fake, or at least there's no record of any Clark family ever living there. But I found her real history. She grew up in foster care, Mom. Most of her placements were within a few miles of our house. I stared at the photograph of that little girl. 6 years old. The same age Jason had been in some of those birthday photos. She was telling the truth about one thing, I said softly. Her childhood was bad. That doesn't excuse lying to Jason about who she is. Rachel's voice rose. Mom, she's been planning this. For years, probably. She found Jason somehow. Maybe on social media. Maybe she's been tracking him all along, and she engineered this entire relationship.
You don't know that.
Don't I? Rachel scrolled through more documents on her phone. Look at this. Her job history. She's worked for 3 different companies in the past 5 years. Guess where they're all located? I looked at the addresses. All in Seattle. All within blocks of Jason's office. She's been circling him, Rachel said. Getting close. Positioning herself to accidentally bump into him at a coffee shop. My stomach turned over. We need to tell him. He won't believe us. You know he won't. He's in love with her, Mom. He'll think we're trying to sabotage his happiness. She was right. I'd seen the way Jason looked at Emma. The way he defended her. If we came to him with this, he'd choose her. And we'd lose him. So what do we do? I asked, feeling helpless. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then, we talked to her.
Directly.
Without Jason. We tell her we know who she really is, and we give her a choice. Tell Jason the truth herself, or we will. I called Emma the next morning. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. Mrs. Morrison. Her voice was bright, cheerful. I'm so glad you called. I wanted to apologize again if I made you uncomfortable. We need to meet, I interrupted. Just you and me. Today. There's a coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Pine. Do you know it? A pause. Then, quieter. Yes. I know it. 2 o'clock. Come alone. I hung up before she could respond. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner booth, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She dressed down, jeans, a plain sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked young and scared. I sat down across from her and placed my phone on the table. On the screen was the newspaper article about Emily and Clark. Your name isn't Emma, I said. No preamble. No small talk. It's Emily. Her face went pale. Mrs. Morrison. You weren't just some lonely kid who occasionally came to birthday parties. You were a child in foster care, who fixated on my family, who watched our house, who learned everything about us. I kept my voice low, steady, even though my heart was racing. And 20 years later, you engineered a meeting with my son and made him fall in love with you. That's not, she stopped, closing her eyes. That's not entirely true. What part? I didn't engineer the meeting. She opened her eyes, and they were swimming with tears. I really did spill coffee on his laptop by accident. I didn't even recognize him at first. But when he told me his name, when he started talking about growing up in Redmond, about his mom and his sister, she trailed off. I knew. I remembered. And you didn't say anything. Would you have? Emily leaned forward. If you were me? If you'd spent your childhood watching the one perfect family you'd ever seen, dreaming about what it would be like to belong to them, and then, by pure chance, you met the son, and he was wonderful and kind, and he liked you? Her voice broke. Would you have said, oh, by the way, I used to stalk your family when I was 6 years old? You should have told him. I know I should have. But I was scared. Scared he'd think I was crazy. Scared he'd leave me. Tears were streaming down her face now. Mrs. Morrison, I love him. I really, truly love him. Not because of who his family was, or because I'm trying to recapture some childhood fantasy. I love him because he's good and smart and he makes me laugh, and when I'm with him, I finally feel like I'm home. You lied to him about your name, about your childhood, about everything. Emma is my middle name. I started using it when I turned 18 because I wanted a fresh start. Emily Clark was a damaged foster kid. Emma Clark could be anyone. She wiped her eyes. And yes, I lied about my childhood. Because who wants to marry someone who grew up in the system? Who had a mother charged with neglect and a father who didn't exist? Jason comes from this beautiful, stable family. I wanted him to think I did too. So, you created a fake life in Bellevue. I created a life that was close enough to real that no one would question it. Parents who lived far enough away that we'd never have to visit. A childhood that was normal and boring and unmemorable. Her voice hardened slightly. I'm not the first person to reinvent themselves, Mrs. Morrison. Most people just don't have someone digging into their past to expose them. The accusation stung because it was true. I had been digging, but for good reason. What do you want from my family? I asked. What I've always wanted. Emily's voice was barely a whisper.
To belong.
To be loved. To have a mother who doesn't look at me like I'm a problem to be solved. She looked at me directly. You have no idea what it's like to grow up without that. To watch other families through windows and wonder what you did wrong to deserve being alone. I thought about my own childhood. Not perfect, but stable. Parents who loved me, siblings, Sunday dinners, birthday parties. Everything Emily had never had. What happens after I tell Jason? I asked. Please don't. Her voice turned desperate.
Please. Give me a chance to tell him myself.
The right way. Not as an ambush, but as the truth. The whole truth about who I am and where I came from and why I didn't say anything sooner. And if he leaves you, then I'll have lost the best thing that ever happened to me. She reached across the table like she wanted to take my hand, but stopped short. But at least he'll have heard it from me. At least I'll have been honest with him finally. Please, Mrs. Morrison. Please give me that chance. I looked at this young woman who'd spent her life on the outside looking in, who'd made terrible choices out of desperation and fear, who loved my son. I could see that now, could see it was real, even if it had started with a lie. You have 1 week, I said finally. Tell him everything. Your real name, your childhood, how you knew about our family before you met him. Everything. And if you don't, I will. Thank you, Emily whispered. Thank you. The week that followed was agony. Every time my phone rang, I expected it to be Jason, angry, hurt, betrayed. Every day that passed without that call felt like waiting for an axe to fall. Rachel called me constantly. Did she tell him yet? What's happening? Should we just do it ourselves? I gave her a week, I said. I'm going to honor that. Mom, she's had 20 years to be honest. What makes you think she'll do it now? I didn't have a good answer for that. Just a feeling. A hope, maybe, that Emily would prove to be better than her worst choices. On day 5, Jason called. Mom, can you come to Seattle? Tomorrow? Emma and I need to talk to you about something. My heart stopped. What is it? Just come, okay?
Please.
It's important. I drove to their apartment the next morning, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Rachel had offered to come with me, but I'd told her no. Whatever was about to happen needed to be between Jason, Emily, and me. Emily answered the door. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, dark circles under her eyes, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly as she gestured me inside. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. Jason was sitting on the couch, and when he looked up at me, I could see he'd been crying. My son, who never cried, who prided himself on staying calm and rational, had red-rimmed eyes and tear tracks on his cheeks. Jason. I moved toward him, but he held up a hand. Mom, just sit down. Please. I sat in the chair across from them. Emily sat next to Jason, but didn't touch him. The space between them felt like miles. Emma told me something last night, Jason said, his voice rough. About her past. About how we met. Jason. Emily started, but he kept talking. Her real name is Emily, not Emma. Emily and Clark. She grew up in foster care. Her mother was charged with child neglect when she was 6 years old. He looked at Emily, pain etched into every feature. And she knew our family when we were kids. She came to our birthday parties. She watched our house. She knew who I was before we accidentally met. The silence that followed was devastating. I didn't know how to tell you, Emily said, her voice breaking. I wanted to so many times, but I was terrified. Terrified you'd think I was crazy, or dangerous, or that I'd been manipulating you this whole time. Were you? Jason asked. Manipulating me? No. Emily turned to face him fully. Jason, I swear to you, when I spilled that coffee on your laptop, I didn't know who you were. I didn't recognize you. It was only after we started talking, after you told me your name and where you grew up, that I realized. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. And yes, I should have said something right then. I know that. But I was so scared of losing you. So you lied instead. For 8 months. I used my middle name, and I didn't talk about my real childhood, yes. But everything else was real, Jason. Every feeling, every moment we shared, every reason I fell in love with you. All of that was real. Jason looked at me. Did you know? I figured it out, I admitted. I found her in old photographs. Rachel remembered her.
We did some research and...
And you didn't tell me? His voice rose. Mom, you knew, and you didn't tell me? I gave Emily a week to tell you herself. I thought she deserved the chance to be honest with you, on her own terms. You should have told me the second you knew. Jason stood up, pacing. Both of you should have. Instead, I had to sit here last night while Emily, whoever she is, told me that our entire relationship started with a lie. It didn't start with a lie, Emily said desperately. It started with an accident. And then, yes, I made the terrible decision not to tell you about our history. But the relationship itself, the love, that was always real. Jason stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. How do I know that? How do I know any of it was real? You've been lying about who you are since the day we met. Because you know me, Jason. You know my heart. You know how I feel about you. Emily stood up, moving toward him, but he stepped back. I know I messed up. I know I should have been honest from the start. But I was a terrified kid when I knew your family. A 6-year-old girl who didn't have a home, who was being bounced between foster families, who saw your perfect house and your perfect family and wanted so desperately to be part of it. So you stalked us? I watched you. From a distance. Because you represented everything I'd never had. And yes, that probably wasn't healthy, but I was 6, Jason. 6 years old and completely alone in the world. Her voice cracked. I'm not that scared little girl anymore. I'm a woman who fell in love with an amazing man and made a terrible choice to hide her past because she was terrified of losing him. Jason sank back down onto the couch, his head in his hands. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can trust you. I know, Emily whispered. I know. And I'll do whatever it takes to earn that trust back. I'll answer any question. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Just please don't give up on us. I watched my son struggle with this impossible decision. Part of me wanted to tell him to run, to get away from this woman with her complicated past and her questionable choices. But another part of me saw the truth in Emily's tears, saw that she really did love him, that beneath the lies of omission and the reinvented identity, there was a real person who'd made mistakes out of fear, not malice. Jason, I said quietly, can I say something? He looked up at me, his eyes pleading for an answer I wasn't sure I could give. Emily's right about one thing. She was just a child when she knew our family. A traumatized child who'd been neglected by her own mother and who found comfort in watching a family that looked happy from the outside. I paused. She should have told you the truth about who she was when she realized who you were. That was wrong. But I don't think she's been manipulating you. I think she's been running from her past. You believe her? Jason asked. I believe her history is real. I believe her feelings for you are real. I looked at Emily. But I also believe she needs to do a lot of work on herself. That you both need time to rebuild trust. And that rushing into a wedding in 6 weeks is a terrible idea. Emily nodded, fresh tears falling. I agree. Jason, we can postpone. We can take all the time you need. Jason was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need space. I need time to think about all of this without you both looking at me waiting for an answer. Of course, Emily said quickly. Take all the time you need. I'm going to stay at a friend's place for a few days. Maybe longer. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. He stood up, grabbing his keys from the counter. Mom, can we talk outside? We stood in the parking lot, the November air cold and sharp. Jason leaned against his car, looking exhausted. Tell me honestly, he said. What do you think I should do? I can't make this decision for you, sweetheart. I know. But you have an opinion. You always have an opinion. He tried to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. Do you think she's dangerous? Do you think I'm in danger? I thought about that carefully. No. I don't think you're in physical danger. But I do think she has a lot of unresolved trauma. I think she's been carrying this fantasy of our family around since she was a child, and now she's gotten the chance to live inside that fantasy. I touched his arm. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you, but it does mean she needs help. Professional help. And if she gets help, if she does the work, do you think we could have a real relationship? I think that depends on whether you can forgive her for not being honest. And whether she can learn to be honest, not just about her past, but about everything going forward. I pulled him into a hug. But Jason, you need to know something. Even if you choose to leave her, even if you decide you can't get past this, she deserves compassion. She's not a villain. She's just someone who's been hurt and who made bad choices trying to protect herself. Jason nodded against my shoulder. I really love her, Mom. Even now, even knowing all of this, I still love her. I know you do, baby. But I don't know if love is enough. 3 weeks passed with no word from Jason. I texted him every few days, nothing pushy, just thinking of you, or call when you're ready, but got only brief responses. I'm okay. Still processing. Love you. Rachel wanted to intervene, to call him and tell him to make a decision. He can't just leave her hanging like this, she said during one of our daily phone calls. Yes, he can, I said. He needs time. This is a big decision. It's a simple decision, Mom. She lied. He should leave her. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Nothing about love ever was. Emily called me once during those 3 weeks. It was late at night, and I could hear the tears in her voice before she even said hello. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this. For lying to your family. For being whoever I am. Emily, I've started seeing a therapist. Like you suggested. She says I have attachment issues. Trauma from my childhood. That I've been seeking external validation and family connection in unhealthy ways. She laughed bitterly. Like I needed a therapist to tell me I'm messed up. You're not messed up, I said gently. You're someone who survived a difficult childhood and made some questionable choices as a result. That's not the same thing. Jason won't return my calls. I don't know if he's ever going to forgive me. I didn't have an answer for that. So I just listened as she cried, this young woman who'd wanted so desperately to be part of a family that she'd built her entire adult identity around that longing. Emily, I said when her tears subsided, can I ask you something? Anything. What did you really want from us? From my family? She was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to matter to someone. To be someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's family. I wanted to walk into a house and have people be happy to see me, not because they were being paid to take care of me, but because they actually loved me. Her voice broke again. I wanted what you had. What you all took for granted. A mother who cooked dinner and remembered your favorite foods. Siblings who fought with you, but would defend you to anyone else. A home that felt permanent. And when you met Jason, it felt like fate. Like the universe was giving me a second chance to have what I'd lost. Or what I'd never had in the first place. I know that sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy, I said softly. It sounds sad. And lonely. And very, very human. On Thanksgiving Day, I woke up to a text from Jason. Can I come for dinner? And can I bring someone? My heart leapt. Of course. 4:00. See you then. I spent the morning cooking, my mind racing. Was he bringing Emily? Had he forgiven her? Or was he bringing someone else, a new girlfriend, moving on already? Rachel arrived with her family at 3. Is Jason really bringing her? She asked, helping me set the table. I don't know who he's bringing. He just said someone. At 4:15, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jason standing there, looking thinner and tired, but somehow lighter than he had in weeks. And beside him was Emily. She looked terrified, standing on my porch with her hands clasped in front of her, like a child waiting to be judged. Hi, Mom, Jason said. Can we come in? Dinner was awkward at first. Rachel barely spoke to Emily, though she was civil for Jason's sake. My grandchildren, blessedly oblivious, chattered about school and friends and the turkey on the table. Emily sat quietly, answering questions when asked, but not volunteering much. She'd brought flowers, white roses and lilies again, but this time when she handed them to me, she said, I Googled your favorite flowers. I should have done that the first time instead of pretending I just knew. It was such a small thing, but it meant something. Acknowledgement. Honesty. After dinner, when the dishes were cleared and the kids were playing in the other room, Jason stood up. I want to say something, he announced. To everyone. We all turned to look at him. He took Emily's hand. The past 3 weeks have been the hardest of my life, he began. I've been angry, hurt, confused. I questioned everything about my relationship with Emily. Whether it was real, whether I could trust her, whether I should just walk away and start over. Emily's hand trembled in his. But I realized something, Jason continued. Everyone has a past. Everyone has made choices they regret. And yes, Emily should have told me the truth sooner. But when I look at why she didn't, when I understand the fear and trauma behind that decision, I can't help but feel compassion. Rachel made a small sound of protest, but Jason kept talking. I'm not saying what she did was okay. It wasn't. But I am saying that I understand it. And more importantly, I believe her when she says she loves me. I believe that everything between us, every conversation, every moment, every feeling, was real, even if the history she told me wasn't complete. He turned to Emily. I love you, and I want to be with you. But we're not getting married in 3 weeks. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I understand. We're going to take time.
Real time.
We're going to go to couples therapy. You're going to keep seeing your therapist. And we're going to build something real, based on honesty and trust, not on fantasy or fear. He squeezed her hand. And maybe, someday, when we're both ready and when you've done the work you need to do, we'll get married. But not until then. Emily was crying openly now. Thank you. Thank you for giving me another chance. Jason looked at me. Mom, I know this isn't what you wanted. I want you to be happy, I interrupted. That's all I've ever wanted. And if Emily makes you happy, if you can build a healthy relationship together, then I support that. Rachel looked like she wanted to argue, but she stayed quiet. There's something else, Emily said, wiping her eyes. She looked directly at Rachel. I owe you an apology. You were kind to me when we were kids. You invited me to parties and let me play with you when I had no one else. And I repaid that kindness by lying to your family and hurting your brother. Her voice shook. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Rachel's expression softened slightly. I remember you now. Really remember you. You were always alone. Always watching from the edges. I was, Emily admitted. And I spent 20 years trying to find my way back to the feeling of belonging I had during those brief moments when I was included in your family. But I went about it all wrong. Yeah, you did, Rachel said bluntly. But I also understand what it's like to be a scared kid. And if my brother thinks you're worth a second chance, then I'll try to be open to it. But Emily, if you hurt him again, if you lie to him again, there won't be a third chance. I know, Emily said. I won't. I promise. Later that night, after everyone had left, Emily asked if she could speak to me alone. We sat in my living room, the one with the floral couch I still hadn't replaced, and she handed me an envelope. What's this?
Letters, she said.
I wrote one to you, and one to Rachel. Their apologies and explanations and, I don't know, things I needed to say that I couldn't quite get out in person. She twisted her hands in her lap. You don't have to read them now. Or ever really. But I wanted you to have them. I set the envelope on the coffee table. Emily, can I ask you something? Anything. What do you want to call me? When all this is settled, if you and Jason do end up getting married, what do you want to call me? She looked surprised by the question. I don't know. I called you Mom that first night because it slipped out. Because that's how I'd thought of you for so long in my head. Jason's mom. The woman who baked perfect apple pies and had a kitchen full of memories.
She paused.
But I don't have the right to call you that. Not really. You know what Jason's father used to say? I asked. He said that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who chooses you, and who you choose back. Emily's eyes filled with tears again. I'm not saying call me Mom right now, I continued. We're not there yet. You have work to do, and trust to rebuild, and a relationship with my son to figure out. But someday, if you earn that right, if you show up and do the work and become the person Jason deserves, then maybe you can call me Mom for real, and it won't feel like a lie. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. I haven't given up on you, I said. But I'm also not going to pretend this is easy or simple. You hurt my son. You lied to my family. That's going to take time to heal. I know. And I'll do whatever it takes. Part 7, final part. 1, 200 words. A year and a half passed before Jason and Emily got married. Not the rushed ceremony they'd originally planned, but a real wedding, carefully thought through and built on a foundation of honesty they'd spent months constructing together. I watched Emily change during that time, watched her work through her trauma with her therapist, attended some sessions with her and Jason when their couple's counselors suggested family involvement. Learned more about her childhood than I'd ever wanted to know. The foster homes where she'd been neglected, the ones where she'd been treated worse than that, the desperate loneliness of a child who'd never had anyone choose her. She got better at being honest. About her feelings, her fears, her triggers. About the days when she felt like an imposter in Jason's life, still waiting for someone to realize she didn't belong and send her away. And slowly, painfully, I watched her become real. Not the perfect, polished version she'd presented that first dinner, but a whole person with flaws and trauma and bad days and good days. Someone who burned dinner sometimes and got anxious at large gatherings and had to fight the urge to people-please her way through every interaction. Someone human. Rachel came around eventually, though it took longer. I'm doing this for Jason, she told me 6 months in. But I still think she's weird. Weird isn't the same as bad, I'd said. No, Rachel had agreed. But it's still weird. The week before the wedding, Emily came to my house alone. She'd started doing that over the past year, stopping by for coffee, helping me in the garden, just sitting in the kitchen talking about nothing important. Building something real, one conversation at a time. I'm nervous, she admitted, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. Not about marrying Jason.
I'm sure about that.
But about everything else. About being part of a family for real. About whether I'll know how to do it right. No one knows how to do it right, I said, sitting across from her. Family is messy and complicated, and we're all just figuring it out as we go. But you made it look so easy. When I was a kid, watching your family, it all seemed so perfect. Like you had some secret instruction manual the rest of us didn't get. I laughed. Emily, my husband died when my kids were young. I was a widow at 35, raising 2 children alone, working 2 jobs to keep us afloat, pretending every day that I had it all together, when really I was drowning. I reached across the table and took her hand. It wasn't perfect. It was hard and messy, and some days I wasn't sure we'd make it. But we loved each other, and we showed up for each other, and somehow that was enough. I'm scared I don't know how to love people the right way, she whispered. That I'll mess it up like I've messed up everything else. Then you'll mess up and you'll fix it. That's what family does. She looked up at me with those blue eyes that had watched my house from across the street 25 years ago. Can I ask you something I've never had the courage to ask? Of course. Do you think you'll ever really forgive me? For lying? For the weirdness of how this all started? Or am I always going to be the daughter-in-law who stalked your family as a kid? I thought about that question carefully. I think I already have forgiven you. Not because what you did was okay, but because I understand why you did it. And because you've done the work to become someone trustworthy. I squeezed her hand. But Emily, the person you really need forgiveness from is yourself. You need to forgive that scared 6-year-old who coped with trauma by fixating on a family that looked safe. You need to forgive the 26-year-old who made a bad choice out of fear. And you need to accept that your past doesn't define your future. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm trying. I know you are. And I'm proud of you for it. She cried then, really cried, and I got up and held her while she sobbed out years of accumulated pain and fear and shame. This young woman who'd never had a mother to hold her, who'd spent her whole life on the outside looking in. When she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, she said, "Thank you for giving me a chance, for not telling Jason to run, for letting me try to be part of this family." "You don't have to try anymore," I said gently. "You're part of this family, messy history and all." The wedding was small and beautiful. They held it in a garden, Emily's choice, because she said she'd always loved my garden and wanted something that felt like home. Rachel stood as Jason's best woman, and Emily asked me to stand with her. "I don't have family," she'd said when she asked. Would you stand with me? As my family?" I'd cried when she asked. I would be honored. As I watched them exchange vows, I thought about that first dinner. About the girl who'd called me Mom before she'd earned the right. About how far we'd all come since then. Jason's vows were simple. I promise to love you. Not the version of yourself you think I want to see, but the real you. The messy, complicated, still healing you. I promise to build a life with you based on truth, even when truth is hard. And I promise to be your family, your home, your safe place, for as long as we both shall live. Emily could barely get through her vows for crying. I promise to be honest with you, even when I'm scared. I promise to do the work, to keep healing, to keep growing. I promise to love your family like they've loved me, with patience and grace and second chances. And I promise to spend every day proving that I'm worthy of the gift you've given me, a place to belong. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. At the reception, Emily came to find me. She was radiant in her simple white dress, her hair woven with flowers, happiness shining from every pore. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for not giving up on me, for seeing past the weirdness to who I really am." "You're welcome," I said. Now go dance with your husband. But she hesitated. Would it be okay if I called you Mom now? Really called you that, not as a slip or a wish, but as what you are to me. I looked at this young woman who'd come into our lives in the strangest possible way, who'd lied and hidden and made terrible choices out of fear, who'd also worked harder than anyone I'd ever met to become better, to be honest, to earn her place in our family. Yes, I said, pulling her into a hug. You can call me Mom. She held on tight, and I felt her shoulders shake with quiet sobs. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Emily. That night, after the wedding, after the guests had gone home and the garden was dark, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about family, about how it's supposed to be blood and biology and simple connections that make sense, but how sometimes it's complicated and messy and starts in the strangest ways. How sometimes family is a lonely little girl who watched your house from across the street and held on to that memory for 20 years. How sometimes family is choosing to see past the lies to the fear underneath. How sometimes family is giving someone a second chance to get it right. I opened the letter Emily had given me that Thanksgiving, the one I'd kept in my desk drawer all these months. I'd read it before, but I wanted to read it again now. Dear Mrs. Morrison, I don't expect you to understand why I did what I did. I barely understand it myself. But I wanted you to know that your family saved my life, even though you never knew I needed saving. When I was 6 years old and the world was terrifying and I had nowhere that felt safe, I would walk past your house and see lights in the windows and hear laughter inside, and I would pretend for just a moment that I belonged there, that I was one of the kids at the birthday party, that I had a mother who made apple pie and a family who wanted me. Those pretend moments got me through the hardest years of my life. I know I went about this all wrong. I know I should have been honest with Jason from the start. But please understand, I wasn't trying to infiltrate your family or steal something that wasn't mine. I was just trying, for once in my life, to be part of something good. I love your son. I love him more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. And I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of him, and of you, and of the gift of belonging to a family. Thank you for not giving up on me. Love, Emily. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the drawer. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the street where, 25 years ago, a little blonde girl had stood watching my house, dreaming of belonging. And I smiled because that little girl had finally made it inside. If you're listening to this story, I want you to know something. People are rarely as simple as they first appear. The woman who seems perfect might be hiding trauma. The lie that seems unforgivable might come from a place of desperate fear. The stranger at your door might turn out to be family in disguise. I'm not saying you should ignore red flags or trust people who haven't earned it. Emily had to do years of work to prove she was trustworthy. She had to be honest, get help, and show up consistently before she earned her place in our family. But I am saying that sometimes the people who need family the most are the ones who go about finding it in the strangest ways. My son's fiancée called me Mom the first night we met, and it felt wrong because it was wrong. She hadn't earned that right yet. But she spent the next year and a half earning it, one honest conversation at a time. And now when she calls me Mom, it feels exactly right. Would you have given Emily a second chance? Would you have seen past the lies to the trauma underneath? Or would you have told your son to run and never look back? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you think differently about family, about forgiveness, about second chances, please share it. Someone else might need to hear it too. Thank you for listening. And remember, family isn't always about where you come from. Sometimes it's about where you end up and who chooses to keep you.